hours a week. And then they'll come in, they'll be like, I'm not losing weight. And it would be like, your fault. And I'm like, well, what are you doing the rest of the 150 hours of the week? Ready.
Hey, everybody, it's Cindy Bell. Welcome back to What the 50 podcast. I'm so excited. I'm here with my special guest today, Laine D'Souza. Hey, Laine.
Hi.
Thank you for being with me.
Thank you for asking me.
I'm super excited. So I'm just going to brief the audience really quickly. I know Laine from Shield Maiden Immersion. You guys have all heard me talk about Shield Maiden Immersion, the 1-week immersive program that I went through in 2020. Laine, you just went through it when?
In January, the end of January, February.
2023.
Yeah, just recently.
Very recently. So I met Laine at a Circle of Champions, a mastermind, one of our masterminds. And that's where we met. And really, I don't know you that well, other than the fact that you're a freaking powerhouse. You're a badass. You're very impressive. And I'm like, I've got to get to know this woman more. And then most recently, we were together at Game Changer in Vegas, although we didn't have a whole lot of time together. But I just kind of want to tap into who you are. I want to share you with my people.
Awesome. I feel honored and privileged. So thank you.
So thank you. Okay, so let's start. Laine, when I first met you, I heard this very slight accent. It's beautiful, but it's like, where is that from? I couldn't quite pinpoint it. So just go back, tell us where you're from.
Yeah, I was born in Hong Kong. My mom is English and my dad's Indian Portuguese. And I went to international school. And so I had Australian friends, like every kind of friend that you would imagine. And in our school, there was like 40 different nationalities. Everybody was half something. You're like half Chinese, half Portuguese, like lots of little islands around Hong Kong, Portuguese colonies. So there was it was just like a melting pot where I was from. But yeah. With that came like a whole other story of not ever knowing where I belonged when I left Hong Kong. So it came with yes, I was very loved in my house and I felt always very loved, but I never felt like I knew where I was from. People would ask me where I was from. And I remember going on this solo trip once just to get away. And I was in Mexico and people would be like, where are you from? And I would just be like, I'm a child of the universe. And it sounded so like crunchy granola, but I really feel like, honestly, that's the truth.
Yeah, I love that. I love it. And that's what a beautiful heritage you have. I mean, you're Indian, Portuguese, and English.
Yeah, that's correct.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Well, my dad's from a Portuguese colony in India. It's called Goa. It's beautiful beaches and,
wow.
I guess now it became like a very yogi. People go there traveling and, like psychedelic drugs on the beach and trying to find yourself there. It was very known for that. But my grandma said if you ever went to Goa, which is where they were from, if you threw a pot behind your head, it would either hit a cow or a D'Souza. So I guess D'Souza is like brown or something like that here.
Oh, that's so funny. Okay. So from Hong Kong to the US, when did that happen?
So I actually went to England. I went to boarding school in England. I had decided I was having a really hard time going to school when I was 14. I was like dyslexic. And all the kids would be down there playing games, and it would always be on our recess. We'd have to have extra English, extra math. So they would always be playing games, and we would look down, and us people, we would be like, and it's just like this shameful feeling that you couldn't be playing with the other kids. So for me, I had a big struggle. I was always teased. I'd wear these glasses, and they would say owl eyes, and my Indian heritage, I had very hairy arms, so they would call me werewolf, and just growing up, it was kind of hard. And then you would think because of all these multicultural nationalities that it wouldn't be like that, but actually, kids are kids, and I don't think I had a very strong sense of self at that time, and I was always looking for some kind of protection. I remember being in kindergarten. And my mom had a very good friend, and they had 2 boys. And this little boy, there's pictures of him, and he's literally protecting me. And I was always thinking that I felt like I needed this protection. I was always this little petite thing, and I was always needing that sense of protection. So I feel like that's been a major theme in my life, looking for that protection. And I also realizing that comes from yourself, over a long time.
Yeah. So let's speak to that. And I don't want to jump ahead too much, but
Yeah.
um, where you are now, I mean, you live in the States. Where do you live?
Yeah. So then I went to New York after I
Right.
graduated
And you did
university.
some Broadway for a while, right?
I did some off Broadway, off
Okay.
Broadway.
Okay. Okay. That's amazing. That's very interesting. So kind of take us through, share as much or as little as you feel like, but from coming to the States and where you are now.
Okay, yeah. So I came to New York and actually I didn't know anybody, but I had this strong-willed thing in my brain. My dad said, if you go to university and you get a college degree, I'll support you to do whatever you want. And I was like, fine. So I went to college, but for me, it was just like a Mickey Mouse piece of paper. I was like, why am I doing this? I'm just going through the motions. But had a very strong sense of like always wanting to please my parents, like a very much didn't want to disappoint them growing up in that kind of environment. So I went to college, got the degree, and then as soon as I graduated, I went to New York. And I had one friend actually, and her dad owned an apartment in New York City, and it was vacant. And she was like, "You can stay there until you get on your feet." And I was like, "Okay, great. Like I've got a place where I'm like gonna kind of pad down." And I got there, and I was just kind of like, I feel like I had no limits. Maybe it was just in my brain that I was like here, and I was like I got all acquainted. I got every paper. I was just kind of backstreeting. I was hunting. There was something called Backstage, which was an acting magazine. I went in that. I got there, and I was like, okay, I found roommates. I just kind of was all gung ho, and I don't even when I look back at that person now, I'm like, wow, she was pretty brave, and just had this ability that this is where I was supposed to be, and just kind of like people would be like, New York's so dangerous, but I had it in my brain, like I have angels, I'm protected, I'm supposed to be here. And I kind of just went for it.
Yeah,
So
you couldn't fail.
yeah, in my brain, there
Yeah.
was no failure because that wasn't even an option. It was just like, we got to go.
Wow.
Yeah, it was
So
pretty intense.
so during that time where you were performing and on stage, of course you had to make money, right? So
Right.
you were bartending.
Bartending and waitressing and it's funny because I used to work in this bar on Sunday, like multi jobs, like just hustle. That was my
Yeah.
name, like hustle, hustle, hustle. And I remember this is what an example of always feeling like I was taken care of, like universe had my back, spirit was going to guide me.
Mhm.
And I didn't have enough money to pay my rent, and I literally had $537 short. And I worked in this hip hop bar, which was like the grungiest, grossest bar on Sunday nights. It was just like this last shift they gave me, and I'm like, I'll take it. Sunday nights, and if I got one champagne guy that would walk in, my night was made. But for some reason, all three of my guys came in that night, and they were ordering bottles. And after I paid out my bar back, I literally walked out of there with $537
Wow.
ready to pay my rent on the next day. And I'm like, okay,
Oh my
just
gosh.
meant to be.
Wow. So
Yeah.
that's a cool story. So how did you get into fitness? Was that initially just to supplement
So
your
no,
income?
I was an athlete in college. I went to school for like in college, and then after that I was always like an athlete, always doing that stuff. But I literally went through the worst breakup of my life when I was in college. Like I thought I was dying. The pain was so great, and it really wasn't the pain of the breakup. It just felt like this huge abandonment, this betrayal. And I literally thought, like, if I go to sleep tonight I could die because I was in that much pain. I couldn't eat, I couldn't sleep. I had like irritable bowel syndrome. I literally would eat something and have to run to the bathroom. And I've always had my grandmother's glutes, like she's Portuguese, so we've always had this big butt. But I literally looked like this little stick person with this big head and this bubble butt, and it looked such. I looked so freaky. And my mom came to, and I didn't tell her anything that was going on. She came to where I was staying, and she was like, "Oh my gosh!" And I was like, I was just mentally really unhealthy, and she
Hmm.
kind of fed me up and tried to help me get better. And after that I was like, okay. So I would go on these long walks. I was not really in the whole college environment. Like I was kind of always like outside, never knew where I fit in, so I kind of always kept myself separate. wanting to feel safe, and that whole coming back to that protection feeling. And so I kind of stayed out of that college dorm area. Like I spent the first year there, and then I went and got my own apartment, and it was like on the edge. I went to University of Wales, which is like literally in the middle of nowhere. All you have is sheep and like
Yeah.
hills. And I would go and I was like, oh my God, I came from Hong Kong. I went to New York. Like this was before New York. So I'm like, this is the opportunity here, right? It was like a bandstand in the ocean. I'm like, this is the opportunity of this place. What am I doing here? So I would go for these long walks with this dog. Like my roommate ended up getting this dog, and she was old, and like really nobody wanted her. She was abandoned, and she brought this roommate, and my roommate was kind of like this person that was also socially inept. So together we weren't like best friends, but we became friends because we were so socially inept. And so she brought home this dog, and I'm like, what are you doing? It was literally like this old black chocolate lab that was like nobody wanted, and it literally saved my life. Another thing that I think about God putting angels into your life, because I couldn't get out of bed for myself. Like I literally was mentally like unstable, like unhealthy, unhinged. I would go to sleep, and it was like my body would sleep, but my brain was like churning.
Yeah.
And so I couldn't get out of bed. This dog would come and literally be like, you need to take me for a walk, otherwise I'm going to pee here. So literally the dog got me out of bed, and I would go for these walks up this mountain, which was, I could see America that way and Ireland that way. And it was like this beautiful like hills. And I was like, I was very spiritual to me, because I felt like God, like there was these great gusts of wind, and I almost feel like the elements were pushing me forward. Like spirit was pushing me forward and being like, "Come on, you can do this. You can do this." So, for me, like animals play a huge role. For me, I feel like they're little spirit angels. So
That
that dog saved my life. Her name was Coco.
Coco, oh, how sweet.
Yeah.
And speaking of animals, I may be jumping ahead, but you like actually have cows, like a lot of
Yeah, we own
cows.
a ranch. So me and my husband bought this property. We bought 150 acres, and actually we got really screwed over when we bought this property. And so then we had no money, because we ended up having to buy the land and from the bank, because they kind of screwed us. It's a long story, but they told my husband, we'll give you the loan, but you have to buy these CDs. And so then when he did, then they told him, no, we're not giving you the loan. And we had to get the money out and pay them $5,000 to get our money back before we could buy the land. So then we were like totally screwed. So we basically were digging all the water lines in this place, the fence lines, everything. And I remember digging with my two kids, and we were digging these water lines. And I'd say to my husband, isn't there a machine for this? You know, like the city girl here digging. And he was like, yeah, but we can't afford it. So keep digging. And we literally laid every water line. Like there was nothing on this land when we bought it. It was actually cotton fields. And my husband like nurtured the earth, the soil back to pasture lands. And it's been a process. It's been like 3 years. But yeah, we do Wagyu cows. We have a horse, and we have like 5 dogs. 5 dogs. And
Wow. And then
yeah,
tell
some
me
chickens.
about that's amazing. Tell me about your fitness, like how you obviously are extremely physically fit. I mean, we can see it right now, but when I first met you, I'm like, whoa, okay, she's something else. I mean, you're just extremely muscular. You're in incredible shape. So I love your mindset around fitness and beauty and health, just in general, especially for women as they're aging. You're 47. I mean,
Yep.
you're not old, but you are closing in on 50. So
Like the younger version in my brain of me thinks 47 sounds so old, but then
yeah,
I feel like I'm just me. And I think you've said this too, like you're just you, and you're like, I still feel like a version of my 18-year-old self.
yeah,
And I think that mindset is everything. It kind of keeps you young.
that's so true. And I just love how authentic you are. You're just who you are on social media and in person. You're the same. But you on Facebook, you post the most thought-provoking things about health and wellness in general and mindset and how it all starts here. And if you want to be in good shape, you need to do the work here and consistently. So
Yeah.
you're not about any like magic formula or secret bullet, it's all about
Yeah.
hard work, discipline, and mindset. So tell me about that. And then
Well,
go,
yeah. Sorry.
no, and then just go into how you train your clients, like what your methods are and why you're so successful with not only your own health, but other people's.
So yeah, when I went to New York, I became like I didn't want to waitress after I got back from a tour, and I was always in my body, but I didn't want to pay membership for the gyms in New York City were really expensive. I'm like,
Yeah.
oh, I just so I was like, you know what? How about I become a personal trainer and I can do a few hours in the morning, get my membership, and then I don't have to like do graveyard shifts in the restaurants.
Right.
I had this whole plan. So I became a personal trainer. I got certified, and it was great working in these corporate gyms at first. Like we got so much training, and there was the one gym that I worked in New York City. It was very cool. It was downtown, actually by the World Trade Center, and that's a whole other story. But because I was there in 9/11, but
Mhm.
just being around these people, and they're the only gym. It was very trendy, it was very cool. Matt Damon lived across the street, so you'd have all these like undercover cool like artists and film movie stars come in there, and it was what it was. But then at nighttime it would change, and you'd have like people hanging off the ceilings. It was like this big circus. It was like a crazy place. So me being a little bit more introvert, I was like, I'm going to do 5 a.m. to 12, and I'm going to be out. I'm going to be done with my clients, and then I'm going to have my life. But it was interesting because it was all about making money. Obviously it was a corporate gym, and sell 50 packets. This is how you sell. This is how you work out a client efficiently. And, they were the only gym in the whole area that actually hired convicts at the time. So all the trainers were like, I wouldn't say all, but most of them were like hired ex-convicts right out of prison. And honestly, they were I became like their little sisters. I had like all these black friends that were like my brothers, and they'd be like, "What's up?" And I honestly had the protection of New York City streets on my side.
Wow.
And they also taught me how to train, like person train for real. It was like I know how to train prisoners and how to train like jail style. So that was cool. But the whole sale really like got to me. And I remember one time it was based on our managers. They would make a bonus at the end of the month if we all made a certain quota. And I remember him calling me at 9 o'clock at night, and he's like, "You need to sell 50 pack now so I can make bonus tomorrow." I'm like, "I'm not calling my client. It's 9 o'clock at night. She's with her kids. She'll just buy it when she comes in." And he's like, "No." And after that, I was like, you know what? I actually quit the job, and I went
Yeah.
to Mexico for a month, just traveling around to try
Wow.
to figure out what I wanted. And I was looking for like healing and shamans and body work and all of this stuff. So for me, I was like, I'm just not working in that corporate environment anymore.
So you decided to start working for yourself, correct?
When I came back, I did group fitness, which was like, you could just get in, teach the class, and leave, and everyone in your class was there because they wanted to
Yeah.
be there, not because, oh, here's my training session, I'm buying training. And what I found in that corporate gym is, there's so many people that will very A-type personality. They'll buy their trainer, they'll buy their stretch sessions, they'll buy their therapist, they'll buy the nutrition, they'll buy the meal plans. And then, you only see them, 2 hours, 3 hours a week. And then they'll come in, they'll be like, "I'm not losing weight." And it would be
Right.
like, "You're full." And I'm like, "Well, what are you doing the rest of the 150 hours of the week? Are you doing what I'm telling you?" And they're like, "Well, I told my therapist this." And it was like they wanted the therapist or the trainer to like fix them. So it was like a
Yeah.
very frustrating world that was like not people that were committed or wanting results. And I think I was just in the cycle where I was like stuck, and I was not feeling very fulfilled by that at all. Very frustrated. So then when I came back, I did fitness classes, and I was teaching 20 hours a week, which is like 20 classes. So I was running around the city just teaching exercise classes. And in these private boutique gyms, you would be paying like you get paid 150 an hour for one class, and you're like, okay. And then people would approach me to train them, and I would have these clients that be like, we'll send a car for you, because I lived in the east side. We'll send a car for you at like 5 a.m., take you to to their house in the Upper East Side or the Upper West Side, and then they would drop me back to where I was, and I would just be like running around on the subway, teaching private clients that actually wanted to be there. But it was really hard to hear how women talk about themselves, like how we expect that there's a secret pill, and really there's not. And it's all our mindset. People just they want it, but when they realize what it takes to get it, they don't really want it that much.
So let's talk about that. It's all about mindset and how women talk to themselves in general. So I've been guilty of this, right? I hear
Right.
so many women say, "Oh my God, I'm so fat. I just want your body, or I just want her body. And just tell me what to do. Okay, just write down just tell me what to do. Tell me what to do."
Right.
And
I want a meal plan. Like, tell me my meal plan. Like, I want the actual plan. And I'm like, but when you get off the meal plan, you're just going to put everything on. I always want to come from an organic place where you're listening to your body, and
Mhm.
you're not actually having a list and a plan, because when you deviate from that, that's when like this binge and purge happens
That's
with
right.
women. They're like, oh, well, I don't have it. It's like, oh, now I can eat the whole bag of chips because I don't have my meal plan or whatever. And it's like, that's so crazy in our brains that we would think that, it's like if you drop your phone, you're not going to sit there and smash it because you dropped it once. And it's the same kind of
It's a good
concept, right? Like,
analogy.
so you
Yeah.
drop the meal plan. Does that mean you go and like smash it for the rest of the day?
No, you
So
pick it
for
up.
me,
Yeah. You pick
just
it
like
up, you brush
learning
it off.
mindsets and seeing where you did. And a lot of things would be so much binge and purge. Like they would binge and then they would come in and they would do these crazy hard workouts and spin class, and they'd be like locking into their bikes at like 5:45, and they would like sweat and they would do all of this stuff, and then they would go out and slam past her and martinis down their throats with these like client meetings. And I was like, this is just so random. And I just noticed there was such a huge difference between health and fitness, what I believed
Yeah.
health and fitness to be. Like the first job I ever walked into, the men and women's locker rooms were shared at the time. And I remember being this young, naive little training, like, wow, I just got my training license, and like, oh, I'm on the floor. And I literally watched this beautiful man with this like sculpted body inject a needle into his arm, and I watched his bicep blow up in front of me, and I'm like, oh my God. So all these that I used to think like, wow, he earned that look, it was like, no, it was like, and then he would like eat, they would all eat McDonald's in the locker room, then they tell their clients to do a certain thing, and it was just like this crazy dichotomy that I would watch. And I was like, wow, health is not fitness and fitness is not health. It's
Yeah.
two completely different things.
So what would you say your model is in when you're training, especially women, right? Especially women, older women who are aging, who are frustrated. They say, I can't lose weight no matter what I do. And you hear that, like, what do you say to them? Like, what is your mantra?
So I feel like it's like, when you go into a messy room and the lights are off and you're trying to clean up and you're trying to put the sweaters with the sweaters and you're in the dark, you can't clean up, right? So you got to put the lights on and you're like, oh, okay, this is really like, now we can put this here. And it's the same with your eating, right? People like, oh, I don't know. I don't eat that much. I don't eat all day. I'm not eating that much. And then comes tonight and they just eat everything. Or they're like, well, I haven't eaten, so I can eat everything in one go. I did find that was a common thing. So like tracking, just track your meals for one week. Let's see everything that goes in your mouth, like whether it's coffee, creamer. A lot of people don't realize like they would go through a drive-through and they would get like one of those coffees that is like huge. It's like a dessert, it's like 1,200 calories right there. And it's like, I'm like, you literally just ate most of your calories in that one drink, and you don't even feel like you don't feel satisfied. So learning to eat like nutritionally dense foods, a bowl of vegetables and protein, non-starchy carbs, just learning to fill yourself up and still feel satiated, instead of just these empty calories, like, oh, I had a protein bar or I had a protein shake, but I'm still, and then you feel like starving at the end of the night and you're eating all your calories and then you overeat. So I just feel like they're like, oh, I was so good all day, all I had was a protein shake, and I'm like, oh gosh. And it's just learning, like to feed your body and nourish your body. And that's also like in the same with our brain. I really think mindset is everything, what I said. Like you could eat a burger with all this guilt and all this like, oh, I'm bad, whack, whack, whack.
Yeah.
Or you could eat the burger and be so grateful and be like, this is the best thing I ever ate. And your body's going to digest that completely different from you sitting there and eating this with so much guilt. And I do think that balance is everything. I would be on the street sometimes, street cafes in New York, and I would be with a friend and we would have coffee or whatever. And they would be like, oh, do you want a piece of the cake or something? And I'm like, sure. And people would walk past and they were like, you eat that? And I'm like, yeah. I really think I grew up in a household where my mom would always do like a meat, a potato, or a starchy carb, and like vegetables. And that was just the way that she was. She grew up, and she was the eldest of 8, so she was always like, she's like the mom figure. She made the food. She would always teach us balance, and she's like, listen, if you're gonna eat butter, eat real butter. If you're gonna eat ice cream, eat real ice cream. All this other stuff is like a chemical shitstorm basically on your stomach, and it
Yeah.
creates havoc. Like, there's people that go to Italy and they're like, I ate for a week, I ate bread and I ate the mozzarella cheese and everything was so good. It's like, in our country, in America, the problem is that there's so many different rules from the European, and it's all about profit and chemicals and shelf life, and not exactly what is going to be best for your body.
Tell you what, I went to Ireland for 1 week, and we ate a lot. I lost weight. Like, I lost weight because there's no chemicals in their food, right? It's just very whole food, very natural food. But your body processes that very differently, right? But
yeah, and the chemicals, like, over time weigh on you. It's like alcohol or cigarettes, like people be like, how we're talking about aging, right? Like, that's another thing that ages you, and also your thoughts. Really, like, we're talking
yes,
about mindsets. Your thoughts age you. That's the difference between, feeling tired and depressed and waking up and feeling sluggish, or waking up and being grateful, right? Like, it's a completely different energy. And it's almost like sometimes you have to kind of create that from the outside in. There was something called Gestalt therapy. I used to be on this search. Actually, I went to New York City. Part of the reason I went to was I was on this big search for healing. So I would study a lot, and I would go to these weird, like, chanting ceremonies. I was on the search for shamans, and I was doing all this stuff. And therapy, one thing that I learned is the outside sometimes has to create the inside, and we think it's the other way around. And even Tony Robbins speaks to this. I think he calls it like smile. And even if you don't feel like it, you put a smile on your face, it kind of changes the chemistry in your body.
yes.
So it's the same kind of thought concept.
Well, Lainey, we're both in the same program where every single day we do our daily focus. And part of that is we do our gratitude. And I love what you said, that it changes your chemistry, and it's an energy. Our thoughts have energy. Our words have energy. Just like food has energy, a calorie is energy, right? So what if we looked at our thoughts and our words as part of our diet? Like, what?
It is.
Yeah. So, I mean, can you really drop weight and be at a healthy place physically if all that you're doing is speaking negativity and ingesting all these negative thoughts and mindsets? And, like, really speak to that. I know it's kind of woo-woo, and maybe there's no science behind it.
No, there is. And that's all like quantum physics.
So
Joe Dispenza, all of that. It's really true. Like, they did those studies where they had like water drops, and someone with like coming from very negative, toxic trauma, the water would come, and it would like be in this dark, scary picture, where someone thinking from gratitude and stuff would make these beautiful snowflakes in their thoughts with the water. It's a cool little experiment that they did with water and how it changes in your body. So our body's made up of water. So think about this, our thoughts. If we can, and this is the placebo effect, right? Like, if you take a pill and you believe it's going to heal you, and they've done studies on this, what you think, you become; what you believe, you become. So if your thoughts can make you healthy, then your thoughts can also make you very sick. And there's many like books and thoughts on this. And I actually worked in this holistic healing center when I was in New York too, at one of the many jobs I had. And it was like colon therapy, juicing, Reiki, somatic healing. And part of that was like believing that, and this is when I was talking about I wanted to feel safe. The body holds memories. The body holds trauma in our cells. So, there's people that have been through terrible traumas, and my trauma is not as of you know, like I can't compare it to somebody that has like a terrible trauma, but everybody's trauma is their own, right? Like we can't compare it.
Yeah.
And we all, like mine have abandonment issues around my pain, but for me, feeling safe in my environment is really important. And when you're not regulating in your own body and your central nervous system is completely out of whack, we tend to create chaos, and we attract those relationships that are like chaotic and drama filled. And there's nothing in your mind. Your mind is telling you that you're not safe, and the body knows that you're not safe. So like meditation is not going to help you there. Not you can't think your way out of that situation, you know. And it's like those moments where you, anything can make you feel unsafe if you come from your inner child being wounded. And it can be anything like, you know, your boyfriend going out with his friends if you've been abandoned or hurt like that. So this is like feeling unsafe within your body. So somatic healing is really important. That's learning to regulate your central nervous system again, teaching your body that you are safe. And there are tools for all of that. But also the important thing is like being able to create that safety within, and know that my feelings, I can be safe within my body, and that my feelings and your feelings are completely different. When you don't have that regulated central nervous system, and you're in, this is like, you know, a trauma response essentially.
Yeah.
When we don't have that regulated you know, central nervous system, what happens is we feel unsafe, right? And it could be illogical, like it's hysterical to somebody else, and they're like, because it's being triggered from old wounds. And so
Yeah.
how do we regulate this? It's like learning to be safe within your own body, presencing yourself, and understanding that I can be safe in my body, and I can also have a relationship with you while I'm feeling safe within my body. And my feelings and your feelings aren't meshed. They're not, yours are yours and mine are mine. And that's the
Yes.
difference also of learning from trauma response, how to regulate your body essentially. I mean, I'm trying to throw it into one, but my
Yeah.
explanation might not be the greatest here.
No, I get it. It's all connected though, too, right?
Yeah, it is.
Our
And
thoughts
it's
and
the
our
ability
physicality.
to regulate your nervous system,
Yeah.
really is to know the difference between my emotions and yours. It doesn't have to be like that we're coming from like, you know, that's a part of the wounded child. You think everything's your fault. You're become very
Yeah.
narcissistic, and this is like learning. Oh, this is an inner child wound, and doing like inner child, learning how to be your own mother. And that's also really important, how we speak to ourselves. You know, like
Yeah.
you know, when women be like, I'm so fat, I'm this, I'm that, and it's like that berating. And it's not really what they're saying. They're not saying I'm so fat. They're saying I don't really like myself because my actions and my words are not aligning, right?
Yeah.
Like I want to be healthy and fit, and I'm here at my training session, but when I leave here, stuff happens and I don't know how to align my words and my actions into one. And so then that causes self mistrust. Your confidence goes like this, and you can't trust yourself, because if you can't keep your word and you can't keep your vision of what you want, and you leave here and you do all of this work, and I'm getting here early and I'm spending money on this, and then I go outside and I forget what I want, and
Yeah.
I'm just like,
Yeah.
you know, it's
What
like
do you want?
it creates a very hard thing for women, because I feel like, and it's not just women, it's anyone. And this is like why it's not just health and fitness, it is your mindset. Like when you don't do what you say you're going to do, you don't trust yourself. And when you don't trust yourself, you don't really like yourself, you don't respect yourself, and then therefore you're making these chaotic choices, and
Right.
um
So let
so
me
on
ask
and
you
so on.
this. When you, I want to talk about women specifically, and
Yeah.
it sounds like you come from a very holistic approach. You know, you help them get physically fit, but you also work with them on their mindset. So women who are more like, you know, in their 50s, like my age, premenopausal, menopausal, postmenopausal, there are a lot of other things going on. And without getting into too much detail, but like, you know, hormonal changes and lifestyle changes and all these things that cause women of a certain age to maybe gain weight in different areas, or to maybe, you know, lose muscle mass, lose bone density, all these things. From a physical standpoint, things like protein, right? Super important. Hydration, super important. Lifting heavy, super important. Getting rid of maybe the high intense cardio that they used to do in their 30s that worked for them, but now causes inflammation in their 50s, right?
Right.
So can you speak very specifically, like to my audience, women of a certain age who want to look great, of course, because we all do. What would you say are like the top 3 or 4 most important things that women my age need to know about getting physically fit?
Right. Well, I would say it's all mindset again, because we're come from that mindset of, oh, I'm gonna do like HIT, and I gotta run 5 miles every day, and I can't eat anything, right? And in
That's
that
mindset.
in the generation that you and I came from, that was like Kate Moss and the supermodels that were really skinny, and then the generation changed, and it was like J Lo changed the whole way of the women saw themselves, and they were like, oh, I'm allowed to have curves.
Right.
But also help, and CrossFit honestly has helped a lot of women realize, like, oh, muscle is good. Look at these women that have these amazing Adonis kind of 6-pack stomachs and this strength. And I do believe, like, women that come in, they're scared to lift weights because, one, they don't want to get injured. Injury is a big thing for people.
It is.
And also, they don't want to get bulky. They're like, I don't want to get bulky. Well, first of all, I'm going to address that, because that's the most ridiculous thing that I've ever heard. Our testosterone level is lowering, right? So as our testosterone level lowers, how are we going to build more muscle unless we're some like anomaly that has extra testosterone? And also, you see those people that are bulky, that is a look that took dedication and time and effort and planning, and that bulky look, or the bodybuilding look, that was a lot of work. They didn't just happen overnight. People like, oh, they come in for one time, they're like, I don't want to get bulky. And I'm like, do you really think that you're going to get bulky from doing some upright rows or something?
No, and that's such a misconception, isn't it? I mean, like,
so
oh,
sad
I get
to me.
bulky. It's like, I can't lift heavy enough. Like, I can't put muscle on because of my age, right? So it's no, don't fear. So you said number one is mindset.
Yeah, like, get rid of that. And honestly, if you're there to change your body, be open. Be open to your trainer knows more than you, obviously, I hope. And trust the process. And just, you've got to listen to your body, right? Like, something doesn't feel right, it doesn't feel right. Now, if you're going to walk into a gym and you know nothing, and you're deconditioned and you're out of shape and you have injuries, I would say the first thing you need to do is strengthen your core. Like, learn how to get into your core. And your core is not just your 6-pack stomach, right? It's your shoulder girdle, it's your pelvic girdle, it's your spinal stability, your spinal mobility, and your 6-pack stomach. So what does that mean? It means that you've got to do everything. You've got to learn how to connect into your core. Our transverse abdominals, they wrap around our body. They're the first layer, the lower abs, and you don't see them, but it's like our internal weight belt. I think Spirit, God, whoever created us, is the most amazing thing, because it's smarter than us. Like, if we could just get out of our own way, I mean, for goodness sake, we can make a human. We build a human in our, eyelashes each week, and fingernails and a heartbeat. Like, if we could just get out of our way, there's a divine intelligence so much smarter than us. But learning to engage into your transverse abdominals, your TA, is very important. It's your first layer of muscle, and it's part of pelvic floor, which is so important as we get older too. And people in this country, they have a baby and they just go straight to like working out, or they don't re-engage and learn how to get back into their core. And when you have a baby, it's literally trauma on your body. It takes 1 year for your body, all your organs, to go back into the right place. And so, you're not yourself for a year. Your hormones are everywhere. The same as we age, our hormones are everywhere, right? So nobody speaks to this as well. When you're in puberty, men are looking at you differently, and suddenly you feel uncomfortable, or you like the attention, or you feel ashamed of the attention. It's the same when you reach like 50 or 40, whatever that transition is for you. It's almost like, I had a client and a doctor literally told her she's 60, and he was like, she was talking about sex, and he said, well, you don't need to do that anymore. And she was like, what? So she's 60 and she's not supposed to have sex. She's not supposed to do all these things on her body. And he basically like shelved her. And I'm like, this is the craziest thing that I've ever heard. And it's like nobody talks to this, right? As we age, what happens to us? And I think that it's so important to trust your trainer, build your core first, and then start to lift weights. If you're lifting heavy
So,
weights
okay.
and you have no idea what is going on or how to engage your core, how to brace your core, before you start doing a deadlift or a back squat, any of the compound movements or any of the old school body
Yeah.
weight bodybuilding
So
movements, you're
is
gonna get injured. So core is super important. They should, and breathing is very important.
so mindset, train your core, lift heavy. Now, women
Lift
should not
heavy.
be lifting heavy unless they are properly trained, because like you said,
Yep.
injury is a big thing.
And
So
also, like, you've got to build
train.
up to lifting heavy, right?
Yeah.
So, and it's all relative. So what if I am going to train a client and she's like, oh, I started on 10 pounds and now I'm on 20, like 3 months later, or 25, and that's lifting heavy for her, right?
Right.
For somebody that's, an athlete, well, they'll be like, okay, that's kind of a warm-up weight for me. So it's all
It's all
relative
relative.
to the person. When we say lift heavy, start small and learn proper movements, because I see injuries that happen, and it's not necessarily injuries from lifting weights, but people do beautiful form in the lift, and then they kind of go like this at the end of the lift. And I'm like, no, you're training for life. This is you lifting up a heavy refrigerator, or this is you
Yeah.
lifting up something out of your trunk. So you don't just drop the weight when you're finished, you stay in your core. And each movement it's not just the movement itself. You're learning the transitions, right? Staying
Yeah.
in your core. And that is why I say core is so important. Like, practice engaging into your pelvic floor, engage into your transverse abdominals while you're doing the dishes, while you're driving, because literally your posture is everything. So I would
Yes.
definitely say posture is everything, because you see those little old ladies
Mhm.
in the supermarket and suddenly they're walking
Yeah.
around and they're like this, and that's gravity pushing down on us, right? And we're talking about
Gravity is
Botox
a
and all of
thing.
this.
Like,
Yep.
I know.
Gravity
I
pushing
know.
down,
Yeah.
down, down, down. So you've got to use your core and literally engage your muscles to hold your skeleton up, to push up against gravity. So
Yes.
that's another thing, like core posture. It's very important.
So let me ask you about protein. I think most women my age do not eat nearly enough protein. And how important is it? I mean, they're like, well, I had a salad and maybe a protein bar. And I know that, maybe 20 grams of protein, but great if they're eating salads, but if they're not putting protein on the salad, like, right? I mean, how much protein do we need?
So it's everybody's different, right? Like, we're all, what do we need? I always say there's no one size fits all in anything, in training,
Yeah.
in genes, in
Right.
anything, like in food as well. But generally speaking, your body would naturally need zero point 0.8 grams of fat. Now, if you're training and you are lifting heavy, you could even go up to 1 gram per pound of body weight. But yeah, there does that
So zero point
misconception
0.8 grams of protein
for
for
women that
your
are aging, for sure.
body weight. So if you
Yep,
weigh
per
one,
pound.
if you weigh 150,
So
that's going to be, 130 something grams of protein a day.
exactly,
So
exactly.
yeah,
And macros are really good for people that I know a lot of people will be like, oh, I don't want to do macros. I don't want to be measuring and weighing my food. But it's great to do it for a week and just track it, and
yeah,
then start to eyeball
do it.
and be like,
Yeah.
okay, so, and also the hand palm, if you don't want to do macros, there's such thing called hand palm way that you can measure your own palm. Like, this is what I'm talking about, divine intelligence in our
Yes.
bodies. Um, one palm size of protein per meal. Like, that is what you could do. Then, like, finger this part of fats, carbs. You
Mm.
can look up the hand
Oh, cool. That's
palm
great info.
method. Yeah.
Okay.
So if you don't want to do macros, but definitely as we grow older, we lose muscle, and skeletal muscle is key to health, especially like injuries happen, and muscular imbalances are more prevalent, and that's
Yeah.
literally how we get injuries are caused from the muscular imbalances and not being strong enough. Falls, slips,
Yes. Yes.
and also there's no feeling that can compare to feeling like you can trust your body. And that comes back to like feeling safe. But when you trust yourself, that's really a key thing. Like I had a client that was in a car accident, and people ask me, well, why do you train? I train for life because I want to be strong when I'm older. I want to ward off diseases. It's preventative medicine to me.
Yeah.
My client was in a car accident, and we had been doing a lot of upper body. Women are generally less strong in the upper body, so we were learning to do push-ups and pull-ups and just learning how to connect into her shoulder girdle. So she's in a car accident, and she literally had to push parts of the car off her and get herself out of the car. And I remember her telling me, like, it's because you taught me this. You taught me that I could do hard things and that I could get out of a situation if I had to. And that's also like a trust thing, right? I had a client that was
Yeah.
in the World Trade Center,
Yeah.
who had to pull herself out of an elevator. Literally, it's a pull up. And you don't know in life when you're going to have to do these things, when there's no one around. I had a training partner in New York, and she was this little badass. She was a kickboxer. She would run all the time. Her cardiovascular fitness was amazing. She was like a professional kickboxer. But anyway, we would work in a bar together at night. And one day when we had closed, she got chased and attacked. And she literally had kicked the guys and literally run across 2 parking lots to get away from them. Now, it's because she trained. And I honestly believe, like, when we get sick, when our body's in a stronger place, you can ward off disease
Absolutely.
better.
Absolutely.
And also that they have shown studies that, especially this generation, my mom's generation, Alzheimer's is so big. It's to do with the chemicals that we were ingesting, our thought process, trauma to the brain, and also like we don't exercise actually helps your brain. Literally has shown to help change the chemicals in your brain, your body. Like we all know the physiological benefits of exercise, but it's just learning that, oh God, I'm doing this, and creating, as we know from Shield Maiden, creating those daily habits that you're not really attaching to, right? Like people want to exercise because they want a result. What exercise taught me from being an athlete as a kid is that you just show up. You show up every day and you do the work, and your body's going to do what it's going to do, because that's what happens. Time and attention, you're going to grow a muscle. But guess what? If you're not like focused on the result and you just keep coming and doing the work and doing the work and doing the work, suddenly you look back 3 months later and you're like, wow, I have a muscle. And so that's what
show up. Show up for yourself
like,
every single day. Consistency.
Right.
So Laine, to wrap this up, how can people work with you? Where can they find you?
So right now we own a gym in our place, and we also, like, I do macros online for people, and we're in the midst of creating an online program for people to do online training.
But in the meantime, they can look you up on Facebook, right?
Yep, Facebook, and we have a website. It's WMR Ranch Fit, CrossFit ranchfit.com. Sorry, WMR ranchfit.com is our website.
Okay, awesome. I'm going to put your contact details in the notes, and so people can get a hold of you and work with you. And one final thought, because I know we got to wrap this up. One final thought: women who are in the thick of the aging process, what's one word of encouragement you could give them? Just one thing.
I think that if you were to look back at where you were, like your 18-year-old self, to now, you could be like, wow, I've grown so much. And it's just learning to accept your wins and learning to accept where you are. And everything is a process, right? Like, to be okay with where you are. Like, we don't need to go and look for outside affirmation anymore. Like, it all comes from within, and just showing up for yourself creates that for you. And that's really what I would say to anyone. Like, make yourself proud. Do the things to make yourself proud, and the rest follows.
I love it. Thank you so much. You're like, I mean, we can talk for hours. Like,
I know.
You're a wealth of knowledge. I just want to tap into your brain for 5 more hours. Get all your good.
Well, thank you for having me. I had such a great time.
Thank you for being on. I really, really appreciate it. I love following you on Facebook. I love your inspirational posts. So everyone follow her. Her posts are amazing. I learned so much just from reading what you put out there every day. So
Oh,
thank you
cool.
for adding value to everyone else. And you look amazing and you are
Thank
amazing.
you.
You're a badass.
Well, and I love it. Strong women empowering each other and also like real like helping other people rise up. And I think we forget when we get older who we are. And it's
Yeah.
like that's what Shield Maiden did for me.
Yes.
It made me remember who I was and my power.
That's yes, absolutely. That's a great note to end on. Thank you so much, Laine.
Yes, ma'am.
Well, there you have it. Thank you so much for listening. And please, if you enjoyed the program today, please feel free to share. I appreciate you. Get out there and start living your best damn life. Until next time, take care.